Darkness fall across the land, and the midnight hour is close at hand. 7 years ago, Elder Ring developers released the best action horror game ever, Bloodborne. Bloodborne is an all-timer and a timeless masterpiece. With Halloween around the corner, what better time is to take a look back at arguably From Software's best game ever, Bloodborne. It is a PlayStation 4 exclusive and action RPG that takes the fundamental gameplay and philosophy of the Souls games, but add a Lovecraftian horror twist into the mix. While not technically classified as a horror game, Bloodborne is one of the scariest games of all time, and that is due in large part to the way the gameplay works, alongside its grotesque, beautiful world building and creature designs. But what makes Bloodborne such a horrific, unique and satisfying experience? There is an incredible power into Bloodborne. It is just not an amazing dance of dodges and swift encounters that often pushes your limits and reflexes and your endurance. It is a thought-provoking experience that warms itself into your mind and strengthens your resolve. But through perseverance and personal growth, determination and skill, it's an unconventional adventure that gives you much more than it takes, and a staggering amount that it gives you, is simply amazing. It is an awe-inspiring and journey through the highest peaks of satisfactions and the deepest, darkest pit of exhausting and frustrations. But the only frustration that doesn't turn out into a triumph at the end are the technical ones. This amazing experience is capable of drawing out the most powerful emotion into a person, and it's something I will remember for the years and years and years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, the podcaster itself. I want to welcome every single one of you to my revisiting and reviewing of From Software probably best masterpiece that they ever constructed, as Bloodborne itself. In this part of the channel itself, we give you our take of your latest games, raw, honest and real. And most importantly, because the night of Halloween is coming, I wanted to showcase you my personal favorite horror game of all time. And while this game is such a unique experience and every single gamer should experience for the very first time, experienced or not. But most importantly, if you do like this content, do not hesitate to smash the like button, you comment down below, you subscribe yourself to the channel and you push the notification bell so you definitely don't miss out on any single thing that I do and throw up within my channel itself. The most important thing as well, if you do like this content, help me reach the 100 likes within this video and 1,000 subscription within my channel, what I'm striving for by the end of the month. So let us see what this story is truly about. But let us see what Bloodborne is truly about, as we are proceeding and checking the gameplay mechanics, the combat, the story, and the world building, the character creation of this beautiful game that is Bloodborne itself. While all the Souls games feature some horror elements, Bloodborne doubles down on the fear and dread right from the start. The opening cinematics takes place from the first-person perspective, as a menacing bearded figure performs a blood transfusion on you. Then, a foreboding werewolf emerges from a pool of blood before catching on fire right before your eyes. And that instance and that scene, it reminds you one specific thing from G.P. Lovecraft once said: the oldest and strongest emotions of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. In contrast with many other popular games, Bloodborne doesn't reveal most of the gameplay story just in generally through cinematic cutscenes. While these scenes are beautiful and do provide you with crucial clues in solving the mystery and the lore of this game, they are not the only pieces to the puzzle. They are hidden details buried within item descriptions, environmental details, character dialogues, and more than one must pay a close attention to order to unravel the story of Yharnam. Let me explain just a little bit more. Bloodborne followed the player character, a hunter, through a decrepit Gothic and Victorian era inspired city of Yharnam, whose inhabitants are afflicted with a bloodborne disease. Attempting to find the source of the plague, the player's character unravels the city's mysteries while fighting beasts and cosmic beings. As we know from Software titles are famous for having deep, somewhat ambiguous lore, Bloodborne is no exception. The story given to the player is barely scratched on the surface, and the uncovering the truth of what's happening in Yharnam requires a lot of extra work. From item description, scrap of dialogue through Bloodborne are the major tools that the fans given into their disposal, trying to piece together the full narrative of this beautiful game. One element where the especially is true that you are countered very early on to the game is the search for what the pale blood is. If it comes to Bloodborne, the game is played from a third-person perspective. The player controls a customizable protagonist, and the gameplay is focused on strategic weapons-based combat and exploration. Players battle varied enemies by using items such as sword, firearms, and exploring different locations, interacting with non-player characters, unraveling the city's mystery. Bloodborne itself began its developments in 2012 under the project name Project Beasts, bearing many similarities to the Dark Souls series. From the same developer, Bloodborne was inspired nonetheless by the literary works of the author H.P. Lovecraft and Bram Stoker Dracula. And the artist design you can see visually can come close to the real life locations from places like Romania, Czech Republic and Scotland. Bloodborne is an action role-playing game played from the third-person perspective, and the feature elements similar to those you know and love from the Dark Souls series from the same developers from software. The player makes their way through the different locations within the cryptic world and the gothic world of Yharnam, while battling varied enemies including bosses, collecting different types of items that have many uses, clues, interacting with non-player characters and opening shortcuts and continuing through the main storyline. If it comes to character creation within an RPG, that's probably one of the most important things if it comes to immersion into a role-playing game. Like any role-playing game, it comes with different features that you can do and alter your character and your avatar the way you look and you want them to look. Within the Souls games, and especially in Bloodborne, you have a character creation that is abundance and gives you a certain form of style, feel, and immersion to your character as you're going to proceed moving forward in the world of Yharnam. At the beginning of the game, the player creates the character, the hunter. The player determines the basic details of the hunter itself, from the gender, the hairstyle, the name, the skin color, the body shape, the voice, the eye color, all one of the most many things and pieces that you can alter and customize your avatar. The player also chooses the starting class, as known as the origin, which provide a backstory for the hunter and sets the player's starting attributes, while the origin itself, which determines the player's past, do not affect in any way the gameplay beyond altering your starting stats. And another thing that is defined within Bloodborne is the player can define and choose which type of brotherhood they are a member of. And what are they? They are a certain form of religious society known as covenants, where each covenants have their own unique viewpoints what the world of Yharnam is truly about. Another unique feature that's unique within the Souls games, you have different form of safe zones. Within Bloodborne, the safe zone in Bloodborne is called himself the Hunter's Dream. By interacting with lanterns spread throughout the world of Yharnam, you will get yourself back to the Hunter's Dream. Doing so replenish your health but also respawns all the enemies in the world itself, with the exceptions of the bosses and the mini bosses. These lanterns also serve as a form of game checkpoints. The players will always return to the last activated lantern at the moment they die. Positioned separate from Yharnam, the Hunter's Dream also delivers some of the game's basic features to the player itself. Players may purchase helpful items such as weapons, clothing, consumables from the messengers using blood echoes or insights. Level up the characters by talking to the doll and upgrading your weapons in the workshops. Among many other things, unlike Yharnam and all other locations into the game, the Hunter's Dream is considered as a completely safe zone for the gamers to relax and reassess the situation after they die or reevaluate the zone they are going to. Bloodborne's world of Yharnam is an extensive map full of interconnected area, Some areas of Yharnam are not connected to the main location and require the players to teleport via gravestones in the Hunter stream. The players may present with multiple options when progressing through the locations, but usually there is a main path that the player uses to progress through the story. When traversing the main path, the players will encounter diverging paths that lead to entire different locations that are optional. Each path will eventually lead back to the central area the player started in. This provides the players with shortcuts and useful for when they die or need to backtrack to a boss or in a different area they found something. Contrary to the other Souls game, combat is a fast-pacing and requires an offensive approach in order for the players to combat dense horde of enemies. The player's character is agile and can dodge attack by strafing around enemies while locked on. The new risk and reward style of a gameplay is emphasized through Bloodborne's rally system, which allow the players to recover a portion of the lost health by striking an enemy within a small window of time. The player may only wield 2 weapons and 2 secondary weapons at one time. Most melee weapons, are called trick weapons, can transform into an alternative state. Each state encounters a different approach to combat. With most trick weapons, one state is usually a slower, larger weapon that usually deals heavier damage per hit, while the other state is a smaller and faster and deals its damage on hit strikes. For example, the Hunter's Axe is initially states as wielding but one-handed, but can be used dispatching enemies and scramble areas quickly. When transformed into a secondary state, it becomes an extended 2-handed weapon, more suitable for crowd control. The player's main secondary weapon is a firearm. The firearm is usually a pistol or a certain form of a shotgun. It can be used in a traditional sense as well as a way to stun enemies. When enemies are close to you, enemies can be stunned. The players can perform something that's called within the community as a visual attack. A visual attack causes a large amount of damage in one hit. A form of a parry, you can see it as a form of the other Souls game. You can also perform after the enemy strikes an enemy from behind a charge attack. The other secondary weapons include torches, cannons, shields, while other melee weapons include a hammer, sword, two-handed gun, spears, swords, and with such a melee and range weapons, and whip, and scythe, and wheel, and just name it. There's abundance of form of weapons and styles that you can approach this game. The player can carry other offensive weapons such as Molotov cocktail, throwing knives, and pedals. Similar to the Dark Souls game, slaying enemies grants the players blood echoes. In the Souls games are also known as Souls itself, and the Bloodborne is known as blood echoes, which is double as the player's experience point and currency. Should the player die, the blood echoes will be lost at the location of the death. If they can reach the point again, they can regain them back. However, should the player die before retrieving the souls of the blood echoes, they will be lost forever. Sometimes the blood echoes may be captured by an enemy, typically identified by glowing blue eyes on the enemy. Defeating that enemy will automatically return your blood lost echoes again. Now, if it comes to Bloodborne and performance itself, Bloodborne as a game runs on a 30 frames per second on the PlayStation 5. But performance is more solid than on the PlayStation 4 port of the game itself. Many PlayStation 4 games runs with a higher frame rate on PlayStation 5. But sadly for us, From Software, Bloodborne is not among them. Although the game does benefit from the console's increases of power, the game however has a better performance on the newer consoles, as managed to keep a steady 30 frames per second in sequences where it struggled before on the PlayStation Pro. On the other hand, Dark Souls 3 and Sekiro as a game itself, they managed to have a 60 frames per second lock on the newer console itself. Now the question is here, of course, is it true the higher frame rate benefits on video games? Yes, but the question is, of course, is it better? Well, like in everything, there is two sides in every single coin. One of those is fidelity. The higher the frame rate, the smoother the game, and in return the easier to control. That's a natural fact. Not only are actions super responsive, they can be performed through combat and moving around in generally. For example, fighting and fighting games become easier and could lead towards a more sophisticated combat system. This makes the game easier to perform, and complex jumps, platforms and environmental system can be added much easier. This leads towards the way that Delve developed the game, how the interactive, the mechanics and the game designs can change completely by having a 60 frames per second lock. The other hand is the atmosphere of the game itself. Games with a lower frame can potentially perform a better form of immersion. Now, if you look for example for yourself, a movie has a 24 FPS lock on by itself. What does it mean? This allows you to register every motion, every picture more realistically, because a movie are a lot of frames that showcase in a different form of scenarios. Because of that, you have a more cinematic feeling of the images that you see. Bloodborne itself has a 30 frames per second lock, very close to 24 seconds of the FPS, or you have the cinematic feeling. From a pure cinematic perspective, Bloodborne is extremely immersive to play and is beautiful to look at. Because of that, you get a cinematic effect where and can be sometimes impossible if you have a higher frame rate. From the motion blur and just how the game is created is simply amazing. But personally, and a personal feeling for myself, I'm not in favor for a lower frame rate. Games with a lower frame rates have a destructive feeling into it. It doesn't matter how good and immersive the game looks at the 30 frames per second, the game has a lagging issue while you're performing a higher demanding controls. The technical term is called the input delays. Yes, these inputs are just in milliseconds, but it still is a thing that you notice very early on, and it truly can break your experience into the game. If you use a higher frame rate per second, for example, if you're used to and higher FPS games. If it comes to the Souls games, Bloodborne is a terrific video game and an absolutely masterpiece within the franchise of the Souls game itself. It is one of those titles and Souls games I will remember for the rest of my life. Even though despite of the length of the video, I think I haven't even scratched the surface of what I truly wanted to say. I really wanted to portray the beauty of this game, the first world art, the leveling design, and the satisfying combat gameplay that comes with this beautiful game. To put every single thing into perspective and put the icing on the cake itself, Bloodborne has one of the most beautiful and insane deep lore in Souls game history. Even after so many years, this game still has me in awe. And it is an experience I truly hope that every single person can experience for the very first time. The one thing you need to remember, that the love that has been poured into every single crevice of this game is undeniable and is truly of one of a kind. It is extremely detailed and is extremely fun to play. It shares so much with its previous Souls games titles, at the same time maintaining its own unique personal identity. For me, up to this day, even with the release of The Elden Ring, Bloodborne stayed from Software's best game of all time. And that says a lot, knowing that the Souls games have one of the most amazing game titles that we've seen in the gaming history. Bloodborne, like all games, isn't without its flaws and is definitely not perfect. There's quite a lot of things that are quite subjective, that can go on one way or be seen in another way. From builds, from gems, from PvP and the first-hand player experience. The story itself is based on a player narrative initiative, rather than a carefully narrative presentation of cutscenes. Because of that, the chances are that every single gamer and player will experience this game in every single different way that I experienced it for my very first time. So we'll not get enough of it, otherwise we have too much of it. But one thing is mesmerizing is the sheer amount of lore that you can find left and right. With a haunting story with multiple endings, there is so much we can talk about. But what should we, to be honest? There is so much fun you can learn by absorbing this game in the most natural way as possible, without looking at wikis, walkthroughs or streams, but playing it for yourself for the very first time, a first-hand experience, taking each step on your own spaces, learning the mechanics, learning the combat and learning the lore and your own space, conquering the challenges and fearing with what you can go back to and re-see what you have missed out the first time. Taking in the story whatever way or capacity you can or want to. Playing with various builds that looks inspiring and just are fun to try out. There is so much mystery and so much to discover and so much to find and to learn. For example, what are the umbilical cores? What are they? What is the story behind the pale blood? Who do I save? Or why are some people missing if I'm sending them to the clinics? Is it best I send them all to the chapel? What is the history of the Burning Hood? What are the ancient ones? Who am I? What am I? And why am I in this predicament? These are all questions that might go all unanswered in your very first playthrough. And that is something that makes the Soulsborne so replayable. Behind every playthrough is a new discovery, a new way to approach the game. Bloodborne is to me the best Souls game I ever played. For people that know me personally, I am not really into sequels because it caters too much the fans into what they want in form of expectations. Sequels are sometimes too afraid to be innovative. Now, because of that, they alienate just to please the fans a little bit too much. But Bloodborne, on the other hand, had the privilege to be inspired by Dark Souls, but not take the responsibility in carrying the torches of that previous game itself. However, it maintained its own perfect lineage and its own perfect, unique experience and identity. And that's something that the Elden Ring, for example, didn't have. For me personally, Bloodborne truly is an endless and a timeless masterpiece. And that's something after this review and this revisiting of this beautiful franchise, I can say that you can say for yourself as well. I definitely want to try it out. I will recommend you this game beyond every single game of the Soulsborne game to try it out for the very first time. And yes, it is a brutal experience, and yes, you are going to curse this game for many times, but the approachability, the accessibility of this game are endless. The lore is amazing and the world and the design is absolutely stunning. For me, this is a true and endless masterpiece. And as a game, I'm always going to recommend to every single gamer out there who truly wants a challenge and wants to live and play in the world that is simply jaw-breaking and simply awesome to play in. On this final note, I want to thank every single one of you listening to me to the extended revisiting and review of Bloodborne itself. My very first review of Bloodborne within this channel itself. I'm your host, the Punkhazard itself, so thank you very much for chilling with me and for being with me during this entire extended review of this beautiful game that is Bloodborne itself. If you want to know more about me, you can always reach me through Discord, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and Reddit, and all those links of course is subscribed within the descriptions down below. And most importantly, within my YouTube page you will find a very easy quick link. Within my channel itself you will find yourself straight to the representative page itself. We're one click button away. My goal is, of course, as a young content creator, I'm going to be straightforward about it because people know me, I'm a straightforward guy. I'm striving to get, of course, 100 likes within this video. I'm striving to get the most feedback within the community itself from this video itself. And most importantly, I'm striving to get within my channel itself to get 1,000 subscriptions by the end of the month. The only thing I can ask, of course, is, but if you do like this content, it's about supporting your home team, because it means tremendously a lot for me as a young content creator trying to navigate, of course, the YouTube algorithm moving forward. I also smash the like button, share this content as much as you want, and of course subscribe and hit the notification bell so you definitely don't miss out on any single thing that I do within the channel itself. And most importantly, I'll see every single one of you during my live streams, my walkthroughs, my gameplay walkthrough, my let's plays, my tips and tricks, my guide videos. You will find an abundance, not only for the Soulsborne game, but any form of games that I stream, because at the end of the day, I'm a variety type of a streamer. Once again, thank you very much for being here and for chilling with me, and I hope I can see every single one of you until the next one. Stay safe out there. Punkhazard out. One love. Always. Peace.